You can't go halfway. You can't go 50%. You can't go a little bit. If you want to have a dream, if you want to live that life where you make an impact on the world, and that's important to you. And that was always something that growing up, I always knew I wanted to make some kind of impact on the world.
Right on. Well, I'm Adam, by the way, and this is about you guys, your journey in music, and how you got to where you are now.
That's where we are now. We're still on the journey.
You're still in. Well,
I gotta go
to this
get
point in the journey.
I gotta go get my earbuds. I'll be right back.
No worries. Take your time.
Yeah. I mean, the journey. Where do you want to begin? That's the question.
We'll start at where you. We'll start with you then, and where you were born and raised.
I was born in Florida.
Okay.
And then I don't really remember that much of my childhood because I had a bit of trauma. But I was there for a while. I guess I moved to Jersey when I was like, I would say maybe 5 or 6 or something like that.
Okay.
Lived in New Jersey ever since that. My dad ended up leaving when I was 10 though, because he was a diamond smuggler and a con man.
Oh my gosh.
My life was a bit in the public eye, locally in the public eye since I was young.
Okay.
With all of that. So yeah, it's like I never really felt like I had much of a home. Does that make sense?
No,
I moved a lot because even, I lived in Florida when I was young, and then we moved, and then we came here, and then it was just a series of chaotic events where I moved a lot. So I didn't really let myself be attached to anything. Mm-hmm. So probably the only thing that I've ever been attached to would be this band and these songs. Like all of the songs are pretty much autobiographical or some representation of my life or my childhood. There's really not that many songs that are about love. I mean, most of the love I'm talking about is the love that you're supposed to feel for yourself or for the world or for your family that I can't seem to get as much of a grasp on as I feel like would be healthy to be able to have. So, yeah. So my childhood basically began in Florida. My dad had a bunch of like t-shirt shops and stuff, and we brought that all up to Seaside Heights. Okay. So I've always been like a shore person. So that was always a big part of, I feel like, my identity or the sound. Even if you listen to the music, there's a lot of arcade-like sounds. Someone once said that it sounds like you're in the middle of a like an arcade with all the different video games going, because there's a lot of arpeggiated stuff.
Yeah,
a lot of high sounds coming in and out. So, but yeah. So basically, my story started out like I never thought I would do music. It wasn't like I was young and everybody was, "Oh, you're a great singer. You're so talented."
Right. Musicians around you or anything like that.
No, it was like I'm no one. I was aware from society telling me that I was probably going to go to jail or something bad was going to happen. That was just my experience with the people around me, teachers, society. So I kind of chose at one point, well, I need to have a focus, because if I don't have a focus, who knows where I'll end up. And I was always very aware of, like when I'm one of 6 kids. So like when we got in trouble or something, that was it. No one showed up to like fix it. You know what I mean? So in my mind, I was like, it was important to pick a dream or pick something.
And what drew you to music?
What
drew you to music? Yeah, to music. It sounds like music was kind of what helped you overcome all of that.
Yes. Well, still trying to overcome it, but
sure.
Here we are. But what drew me to music was honestly seeing other people so happy doing it. So one of the reasons why I chose to become friends with John was when we were little. I remember I was in 8th grade and he played a talent show where he played the drums, and he was so amazing at playing the drums. He was also so happy. And I was like, well, I'm never happy, so maybe I could be happy for a little bit like this guy. And that's really what initially drew me to it. And then I just played music. I basically decided to start playing bass, got lessons, took the little amount of money that I had as a human, got a starter bass. And even the bass teacher I found was so nice because he knew I was broke. And when I couldn't pay for lessons anymore, he just let me keep going.
Wow.
For like, yeah, it changed my life for a while. And yeah, what drew me to music was basically just I wanted to focus. But the funny part is I didn't even really listen to music at the time.
Huh. So you're creating on, were you writing music, I guess, when you're playing bass, or just learning scales?
I was like learning scales, learning theory, and also creating my own stuff. Yes, the whole time. But it wasn't like I had the confidence to think it was anything. It was more just do this thing to avoid the really dark thoughts that you have all the time. Looking back, I can see this now. Mm-hmm. You know, then I couldn't see it because when you're in that flight or fight kind of mentality, you don't really see that. Mm-hmm. You think everything's the way it's supposed to be. But looking back, it was just like a therapeutic thing to do every day, all the time. And I did it all the time. But from 14 to like 25 or 24, I didn't sing at all. I didn't sing songs. I didn't write songs like that. I just played bass and did instrumental music. So It wasn't until I was. Did
you play in a band or anything before that, or was it just only? I only
jammed out with John. That's it.
Oh wow!
Since 14 or 15.
Yeah, we've always just been a band since we were young.
Wow!
Crazy.
Well, you guys met in 8th grade. Well,
yeah.
I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't call us a band then. I'm meaner than John is, because a band to me is people who really put the risk out there and who really go for it. And other people who don't do that are kind of, they're musicians and they're playing. But I have a lot of respect for people who really choose to step out and be in bands, because it's not easy.
Were you playing in bands prior to, or has it always just been you two, John? Or were you in another band? It sounds like you did a talent show.
Well, yeah. So pretty much, like, you know, after that talent show, Brandon, like, we became friends, you know, kind of buds, you know, and then like we didn't really hang too much up until like high school. And then it was actually, we were talking about this the other day. The first day, or like the first time I ever played at a venue was on Brandon's birthday, like December 10th, 1999. And like, yeah, he was at that show, and basically,
happy birthday, man. That was your, what, a couple days ago.
Well, thank you. Yeah, a couple days ago.
Sorry.
But John was in, like, I would say maybe like what you could qualify as, like, you know, 2 bands that he was actively trying in to some degree. So in that sense, like, you were in bands, you know what I mean? Like, you did do it.
Well, yeah, like
you played Bird Show and stuff.
Yeah, that was like that was that band that I was playing with. It was like this band called Bleeding Grounds, and straight up just like grindcore. Like, I just wanted to play the heaviest, hardest shit possible. Like,
yeah,
at that point. And I kind of wanted to, because so what happened is, like, I was with that band for probably, like, I don't know, about year and a half, and was it basically, it's like, yo, like, you know, we should jam or something, man. Like, you should, like, pick up like the bass or something, and we could just fucking just rip and just jam and stuff like that, you know. So he gets a bass, and we just start, like, just jamming, like, all the time, hours. Like, we would play it in his basement at his mom's house. He had, like, this massive basement, and we would just jam for hours. And then he would come to me with things that he made up, like, not knowing that they were in odd meter, not knowing that, like, they had odd groupings and all this stuff. And it was just like, oh, this is, like, for me as a drummer, I was like, oh, this is, like, kind of cool to attach myself to, and, like, because it's unorthodox, like, style and, like, timing and shit, you know. And that's kind of how it all started. And we just, you know, started playing a bunch, and we really, like, enjoyed it. And yeah, we just got, and it got to the point to where we were like, oh, let's start playing shows. Like we're playing bass, like just shows with just instrumentals, just bass and drums.
Yeah.
No vocals. Yeah, it was pretty
Well,
funny.
it was like we were.
I actually came across an old. No, I was just gonna say I came across an old recording, of one of ours, like when we used to play shows like that.
Yeah, and we were just standing
literally,
there so
dude. There was like a minute and a half beat between songs, and I'm just like fucking like blowing myself on the drum, just doing like these random fills for no reason. Talking to the microphone, you do the same thing on the bass.
But that period of time that John was talking about was like really influential for me in the sense where like I realized that maybe I had ideas that were valid, but it wasn't like a clear cut, oh, now we're happily jamming as people and here we go. Now we're going to start singing. It was like, we did that. It fucking didn't work out. Nobody gave a shit after a while. Like it was cool for a while. Right. And then we hit a point where we're in our 20s that it was like, we weren't hardly even doing that anymore. And John was pretty much playing in a cover band because he had to make a living. And I was like anti-society, anti-corporate, anti-everything because of my childhood. I didn't even want money. I hated the idea of money because my dad was so driven by it, I guess, right? So there was a period of time where it was like these lost years of we didn't really do anything. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And that's when I decided I need to try to maybe I'll try to sing, because I remember John was just playing with this cover band and he was also playing with other very talented people, you know? And in my mind, I was like, well, I better do something or I'm going to be stuck here forever. And I'm going to do the same poverty cycle as people expect me to do. And I remember the moment where I chose to try and sing. And I remember I did it privately by myself. And I was in my grandma's spare room because I didn't have anywhere to live. So I was living there and I was a garbage man with John at the time. And I started singing in this little room. And I'm like, okay, next show that me and John do, because we'd sparsely did these shows still. I was like, I'm going to sing this and I'm not even going to tell John. And I remember I was like, the last song I sang instead of doing the instrumental, and everybody in the room fucking hated it. It wasn't good at all. It was the feeling was like the most embarrassed I've ever felt in my entire life to sing ever. But it was great because it was so liberating, because I was like, it could never be worse than now, because I never really practiced. I didn't try that hard. The night before or 2 days before, I just tried it and then I did it. And it was like, okay, well, I'll never feel as terrible as right now. And I've carried that to here. So it worked.
Wow, yeah. You don't know what came over you and made you wanted to start singing?
I felt like I had to, because I felt like I knew the way the world worked, because the way I look at the world is in a very, I would call it realist. Some people will call it cynical, but I feel like you have to, especially in this world, like if other people are doing things and they have talent and there's always a chance they could go places. And if you want to go places, you have to be able to either compete with that, you know what I mean? Or you have to have a reason for what you're doing. You have to pick what you're going to do and really go for it. You can't go halfway. You can't go 50%. You can't go a little bit. If you want to have a dream, if you want to live that life where you make an impact on the world, and that's important to you. And that was always something that growing up, I always knew I wanted to make some kind of impact on the world. I guess because psychologically I felt so invisible and all this bullshit. My dad was this larger than life story-like figure. Because people with my dad, half the people treated him like Robin Hood. You know what I mean? Like when he bounced and the FBI came for him and all this shit, he signed over all of his stores to Dues and Seaside and basically gave them the store.
Wow.
So, you know, in my mind, there was like, it wasn't like he was like bad or like there was a negative connotation. It was this weird mix, but there was always like a larger than life figure. So I knew I wanted to do something. I just didn't know what I could do. But I remember being in that room and realizing like, you know, my friend John is super talented. This other kid he's singing with is super talented. They're all super talented. I didn't mesh well personality wise with this group of people, right? They didn't want me in it. So I was like, I better try to figure out how to do it myself. And that was like just the initial push, was that fear of I have to figure something out. But then once I started doing it, it became more of a therapy. Like, whereas playing was just masking the feeling, like playing was like distracting myself. Oh, cool. I could play bass all day and I won't think about this thing or that thing I'm feeling, or these negative thoughts, or this experience, or how I didn't get this, or I didn't get that. But then when I started singing, I was able to really look back at my lyrics and go, oh, well, why did I say this? Because I wasn't like sitting down writing the lyrics out. I was just singing words off the top of my head until they felt emotional to me. So
wow. And then you go back and write them down after the fact?
I didn't really have to write them down because I just remembered them.
Remembered it? Wow.
I just like have a pretty good memory. Like I'll fuck up words here and there, but when I'm writing a song, I'm real good at kind of remembering. And also I think there's something to, if you're writing a song and you're not writing the lyrics down, why didn't you remember that?
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard anyone say that before, but that makes sense.
You know? So,
yeah.
I mean, everyone has their own thing. And it's like, I don't strictly stick to that. But in the beginning, I remember it wasn't like I was like, I also wasn't taking myself so seriously, you know?
Sure.
I was just like, so basically that was the initial beginning to it, was just out of like, I guess you'd say pragmatic, like, oh, well, if I want to keep going with music, I'm going to have to do my own thing because the people I'm meeting don't really get me that much.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. And John, when was it that you knew that this band was going to be something that you needed to pursue amongst the other, it sounds like you're playing in other bands. I'm sure you had to put those on hold when stuff started happening.
Yeah. So basically it's like, in my head, I was always going to play with Brandon just because like he was my boy and we were friends, and like we had such a kinship and such a camaraderie, I guess you would say, when we played together. Like we were very like I've never played with anybody musically that was so on the same page as I was with Brandon. And the people that were playing with at the time, like with me, it's like drumming and music and being creative came very easy to me. So essentially it's like, and that guy, the guy that Brandon was referencing to was a friend of mine who I had known since I was playing in that band Bleeding Grounds, right?
Okay.
We had played a few shows with that guy and whatever, and like we were playing shows at that time, like me and Jesse. The guy's name is Jesse. But I never had like this in my head where I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go with Jesse, or I'm gonna go with like.
No, but that's not what I'm talking about.
I always knew that.
But that's not what I'm talking about, because it's more like at the time, like I had jammed with y'all too, and Jesse decided himself that he didn't think my vibe was cool because I had too many ideas that were I was too aggressive. That's what I was told when I asked him, because I confronted him about it. Because at the time I was trying to be bassist in that band, but we didn't mesh, right? But I'm not saying that you wouldn't pick to hang out with me because we're boys, John. I was saying like, I'm not going to tell my boy if Jesse wrote a song and it blew up and you guys are going to tour around the country and have to pursue the dream. What was I going to say? Don't do that. I was going to be like, go do that. Well, you got to do that. That's just how life works. You know what I mean? Like, that would be fucked up of me to tell you to not go do that. Do you know what I'm saying? So when I started singing, it was because I didn't want to, like, one, selfishly, I didn't want to have to tell you to go do that because it would still hurt, right? And two, it was like, how could I even be upset if something that you did took off, right? And I wasn't part of it, because I should still be happy for you as a friend. You know what I mean? So that's where my choice came. Wasn't that I didn't think you would do it, was just more like, or didn't think you would stick with me. It was more like, well, this guy's really talented and there is a chance that this guy Jesse stuff could take off. And then that's just going to be the breaks, because that's how life works.
Yeah.
You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, totally. And like, and, you know, basically it's like, you know, once Brandon started singing, we were very quick to get something out with vocals on it, you know, because like singing singing and writing lyrics to me came very natural to Brandon. Like he was just naturally, like, the guy never sang before or wrote lyrics down or anything. And the stuff he would come up with was like pretty compelling and like poetic and shit. And it was just like, you know, where did you learn how did you know how to do this? Which was funny because it alludes back to when he started playing bass. And like, you know, like he would just come up with shit in 9/8. And I'm like, dude, do you realize that like that's a 9/8? That's like a difficult thing what you're doing right now, you know? And that was just that, and that to me was what was refreshing about the musical creative experience with Brandon, you know? And that's what like made me like hungry for the potential that we had, you know? And like we tried like, you know, trying to fulfill the full band with like, you know, prior to him like, you know, becoming like the vocalist, we wanted to have like, you know, guitarist, singer, you know, see if we could try that route, because, you know, the instrumental route wasn't really like, it got to its point, but then we were like, all right, we need to do something more, you know, and so on and so forth. But
so now you're
pretty
seeing
much,
the whole,
yeah, it's like, you know,
now John, you're saying you're seeing the whole slightly depressing picture of that point in time, because it was like we did the jamming and it was pure and it felt great, but then we needed it to grow and it wasn't growing, and then we desperately tried to do everybody else, and then we both were still friends, but like you were playing with other people because like you wanted to play, and I didn't want to play with any other people because I just wanted this to work out. So it's funny because if you think about it, all that like sad part where we didn't know what to do with the instrumental led to Brick and Mortar, because I wouldn't have started singing if people loved the instrumental, because we would have just kept doing that. It's very interesting when you think about it as like, I think
totally.
of
and like, and also, which sometimes it's like, it's true, because there's so many like themes that throughout life that are just like, you know, portrayed in movie style like a lot, but yeah, it's like, you know, like I said, like so basically my point is like the whole trying to complete the band was unsuccessful, and then we ultimately led to us just putting out our first EP, 7 years in the Mystic Room in 2010, and yeah, that kind of started the whole fucking thing, you know.
Yeah, so once people heard it with the vocals and everything on it, it just took a life of its own. It blew up much quicker.
Yeah,
than
well, it got better. It got
yeah.
better.
Yeah,
It wasn't. It was never as bad as. It was never as bad as it was in that one coffee shop ever again. So
I would say John wasn't. I would say from my experience, John was not sold that I was a. John was not sold that people would like my singing, probably until I feel like after the first EP, into like the Bangs one where we like were really in the studio with people.
It was
that was when, because before that it was like both of us just thought of me as a guy trying to fake it, because that's what we both, because I was trying to just fake it. You know what I mean? Like, so it was kind of funny because it's like we went into it going like, we know people will like this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And you said on the Bangs EP that changed?
Well, and also too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say also
from your computer.
Is it still cutting out and shit?
You're just kind of laggy.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the conversation is not as like,
yeah,
I'm either talking over you or waiting for you.
Yeah,
sorry about that. But with the Bangs EP, it changed because it's like, well, not only it's like, yeah, like I sat like a lot of the way we write songs, and like John's an amazingly talented drummer. He's a very great musician, but there's an aspect of Brick and Mortar that is very singer-songwriter like, because I'm a very isolated person. Mm-hmm. I'm also a very meticulous person, and I have like an extreme amount of patience for like I could change something 100 times and still not be upset. You know, like I don't really get the whatever the psychosis of you change something so much that you're pissed at yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's always an aspect of that was kind of insulated, right? So on top of doing all of that stuff, I kind of carried that because of now look back, because of the abandonment in my childhood and having to fend for myself. And, you know, just even before that, like when I was like 20, I didn't have anywhere to live and I was like living in my van and then asking people fucking stay on their couches. And so I had this feeling that I couldn't wait for people to help me. I couldn't rely on other people, you know? So even before we got the Bangs opportunity, as soon as we did the first record, you know, and we did 7 years in the Mystic Room, I was promoting so heavily. I got kicked off of Facebook twice for inviting people to shows, and I would use the events for releases. You know what I mean? Like sure. I would. That was back when it was worth it. Like now it's not, because they don't show anybody anything. But I just feel like we pushed so hard to get everyone to be like, look at this, look at this, look at this, that we didn't even have time to think if we were good. We just put that out of our minds. Where like, at least I did. I was like, I'm not even going to like contemplate whether what I did is good. I'm just going to push it as hard as I can. And then the cool part that happened though, is like the way that we got Bangs was that first, before Bangs, because of 7 years in the Mystic Room, all of the kids from Philadelphia, when we would go to play all these house parties, because that's what we did a lot of, like basement shows and just like real DIY shit, they wanted us to be part of this 7-inch series that Motion City Soundtrack was curating and producing.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So it's called Making Moves. And I think they picked like, you know, 8 bands or 6 bands or something like that to do 7-inch with each band that was put out by Mad Dragon through Drexel University.
Okay.
We were the only band picked by the students. So everybody else had like all this teams of people who believed in them and shit. And we were just ragtag pieces of shit from New Jersey that were like we're already fucking old compared to everybody else. You know what I mean? Because I didn't start singing till I was fucking 25.
Right.
You know what I mean? 24. So it's like at this point, it's like I'm doing my first like real in studio thing at Drexel University. And, you know, we did these 3 songs, and the 3 songs we did were Bangs, Old Boy, and the song called Other Drugs. And Bangs ended up getting us the deal with Photo Finish.
Wow.
And that was our first like real record deal, because someone in like the West Coast like played the song once. This is where like when like radio still mattered, to where you can get like 3 spins and someone's like, hey, maybe that's going to be a thing. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like now I feel like it's harder to justify the risk, but because there's so much data now, like that's the only thing that's a bummer about today is like people don't pick things based off of feeling. They pick it off of like, it's already
analytics.
working.
Right.
Analytics. So, you know, when we did this first experience and we were with, you know, Motion City, and they were so nice to us producing this particular like couple songs. What was funny is like they're so proper and like they don't curse a lot and all this shit, and like we're showing up like all fucked up and we're like fucking cursing and high shit and we're like arguing with each other and stuff, because like that's just how we did it. You know what I mean? Like we're just no holds barred type people. And so it's like, but I remember right when we got like by the time we were at Drexel, like John looked at me differently and he knew that like, okay, my voice must be pretty good, because my voice, I'm aware, like my voice is like people either like it or like they do not like it. It's not like a middle of the road.
It's always been that.
Yeah.
It's always been that. I feel like, you know, it's like, well, especially coming from me, I was trying to say before, like with all the lag and stuff, it's like, with me, it's like, I know Brandon so well, and I know like the timbre of his voice and all these things, you know? So it was very, like, I was like, it was more of like a, like, not that I didn't like it, but it's just like, that's fucking Brandon. Like, I know that's fucking Brandon, you know, like as a friend, but like as objectively as an artist, like that was kind of actually a good thing that it's like, because it's so unique and so it stands out to me. At least I think his voice stands out amongst a lot of singers because of that.
Mhm.
I feel like it's either you love it or you hate it. Like, I feel like with any signature voice, you either love it or you hate it, you know. But
Mhm.
at that point, yeah, I was like, oh, this motherfucker, you know, this he can fucking sing his ass off, you know.
Yeah, and well, obviously people dig your voice, and you have millions of streams, and even the new song I love, it's called Mystery to Myself. Tell me about that new one.
Well, that new one was like basically things have been hard for a couple of years, pretty much. I mean, you know, we had the whole story of like getting signed, getting dropped, you know, then I went out and found investor, and then like put out a re-release after we fought the label to get the rights back and all this shit.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to do
You
like
gotta tell that
everything
story.
ourselves.
Yeah, I want to hear this
You know?
story.
Oh, well, we were originally signed by Photo Finish Records.
Yeah.
And then they did what was called a complete my album.
Okay.
You know?
Uh-huh.
And a complete my album is a terrible deal because pretty much it means that they're going to soft release your record, like half of it as an EP online. And then if it does well, they're going to release the other half, you know?
Oh, okay.
But
I've never heard of this
the
before.
if it does well, it was a thing around for a little bit.
Okay.
When
If it
iTunes
does-
was a thing.
Yeah. If it
Okay.
does well is a very vague statement.
Right. What does that mean? Does it mean it sells
Th-
5,000
that means
copies
you're
or
fucked.
50?
That means you're so fucked. That means that if you don't do awesome, they have an out. They have
Got
a
it.
way to say no. So we
Okay.
did like our first EP, and then at the time, Island and Def Jam, they were either coming together or pulling apart. One of the two, I forget which one.
They were
but
disbanding.
they basically culled all the bands that weren't like super successful, right? So
Uh-huh.
anything like in development that wasn't, I guess, deemed by them to be worthy was cut. So we were part of that group of people, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So we get dropped after having our first real record deal about maybe a year into it, not even, right? We get dropped. I'm like, fuck, well, I want the other half of the record back because you guys dropped us. So legally, I should be able to get this back.
Mm-hmm.
Label's not talking to me. They're not answering my emails, nothing. No
Wow.
communication. I'm a fucking loser. Doesn't matter. They don't give a shit. You know? Like
Uh-huh.
Photo Finish was nice to us, but like it's funny because when you get dropped by a label, when you get signed by a label, it's everybody from that subsidiary label. But when you get dropped, it's mom and dad at Universal telling you, here's your letter, go fuck yourself. I mean, it's no longer like your buds. It's not like your
Right.
friends at the smaller label going like, hey, we're sorry. It's like them going, hey, we're sorry. And then Universal being like, we're not sorry, you're dropped. Like, that's
Yeah.
it.
See you later.
See you later. And then I was trying to get my songs back, and they weren't. And now I was like pissed because I was like, yo, what the like, okay, you're gonna drop me. That's fine. Give me my music back. Weren't talking to me. I randomly get this email, and in the email, they're like, Brandon, do you remember when you did that cover of Jimi Hendrix when you guys were at South by Southwest? Because I had stopped and I had sung on this cover for some unknown movie trailer, right?
Mhm.
At the time. So all I did was stop in there. I sang the song to the best of my ability, only cover I ever did in my life, really. And basically after that, didn't even think about it. We get this
Mhm.
email, and it turns out that I was able to negotiate a better rate for the song and a better rate for for getting all my songs back, because in the email, they were like, Brandon, you know, when you did that song, South by Southwest. Well, it turns out that one of our workers, they forgot to send the contract over for you to sign. So you never signed the rights off to it. So because they never sent me the song, they had already sold the song to a trailer and they didn't have my signature. So that was really the only reason I was able to get all the songs that were on dropped.
Oh,
Because
wow.
If that didn't happen, I wouldn't have probably gotten it back. Or maybe I would have. I don't know how long it would have taken, because they
Right,
weren't really
'cause now
responding
they need
to
something
me.
from you, right? They're
Yeah.
like, oh, hey, actually. And then Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, you know, typical rebellious me, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm going to make this hurt. And then, you know, I talked to the lawyer to try to get the best thing I possibly could. We got the songs back. I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call this shit dropped. And I'm going to tell everybody that this is why it took so long, because we got dropped. And I'm going to market this whole thing around what's really happening. Because my one thing that I always wanted to do was never lie.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm fine with not lying. I don't care if people really think about me that much. Like, other than like wanting people to like what I do, right? But like actually caring what they think about me and my decisions, like I'm okay with most of my decisions. And I would say being honest was always a thing that I wanted to do. So I was like, well, I don't want to make up some faux, I'm so confident, look at me, here are these stuff. No, I'm just gonna call it dropped. I'm gonna put a fucking birthday cake on the cover that's all fucked up, like we're celebrating being losers. And that was the theme of it. And even when we were going on tour with like this front bottoms and shit, I was like, oh, I'm gonna even have these kids like chant fuck Universal. We'll do a whole like thing of it. Because in my mind, big deal. I'm a fucking small fry. I'm nobody. You guys are like the biggest company on the planet. Like, I'm just being cheeky. Whatever happened to that? But maybe that blacklisted me. Who knows? I'll never know.
We will see. Yeah.
We will see.
We will see. Well,
yeah.
okay. So that was a drop DP. You put another record out after that one, correct?
Yeah. And then we went through the whole thing.
Full length.
Yeah. And that was the whole thing where we're like, okay, well, we got this drop DP. What are we going to do next? And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, we got to start making the record. So we'll start making the record and then hopefully we can find a home for it. And we're figured like, all right, well, we've done some things. It's a no-brainer that we'll find a home for it. But it turns out that like we weren't really allowed to go under any subsidiary of Universal after that as Brick and Mortar. Kind of like, I guess, seemed like part of the stipulations, you know, and also it's just like not the easiest to get back under that umbrella when like you've been dropped by it. Does that make sense? Especially close to Island Def Jam. So we found ourselves just being rejected by like everyone. So everyone just said no. Like everybody said no. Like every person we reached out to was like,
it was like the pestilence.
Yeah. It was like, no. You know, in my head, I'm like, I mean, I'm not smoking crack. I'm not crazy. I'm not like the wildest guy. I'm not saying offensive shit. Like, am I being punished because I was like a little punk rock boy saying like, fuck corporations? Like, am I really getting like spanked right now? Does no one want to fuck with me? You know what I mean? That was going through my head. Like when you get rejected by everybody. And even
how do you keep going? I mean, how do you like persevere over that and just say, you know what, let's just keep trying. I would imagine it'd be hard after a certain amount of no's.
Totally hard, completely hard. I mean, it's still hard now.
Yep.
Because there's so much shit that we have to do and keep going. And it's like, yeah, you have to believe in yourself. And then you have to hope that everybody else in the whole world is wrong because they're not seeing what you're seeing. And really the fans are what keeps you going. And even that is tough because you feel guilty because the more years that go by, the fans encouraging you and all this stuff, it turns almost to like a self-disappointment because you feel like you're disappointing them because they believed in you for so long. So it's like, when's going to be the time where you break through, you know, where you get to that next level. So for us, like we had these really rabid fans that were really awesome on the internet about supporting us and listening to us. And that's pretty much what kept us going the entire time. And yeah, like the experience of putting our own record out and doing all of that. I mean, it wasn't really that alien because even when we were signed, there was so much stuff that we like record label never like got us music video people or anything. Like we always did that ourselves. We always I always made the connection. I was always looking for the next person or make it, you know, like I was always a deal maker. You know what I mean? Going like, listen, I can't pay you a lot of money, but I could probably get Universal to, you know what I mean? Do some more videos with you if they're like ours, you know?
Right. Were you saying something, John?
I was just gonna say Brandon's just like a born hustler, you know. His dad was a hustler. It's just like in his blood, you know. He just doesn't stop, and that's what's pretty inspiring, you know. But like, yeah, to like Louis was saying, it's just it's tough all around now, man. And like the year of everything shutting down didn't really help anything, you know what I mean? So I know that's everybody, but you know, didn't really help us too much. But,
Right. Where were
know,
you
we're
guys on tour
still
when that happened, or
persevering, though.
yeah,
No.
how did that? How did that affect you? I mean, you have some new music out. Were you able to write?
For me, honestly, I don't know, maybe my experience was different than John, but like the pandemic for me was actually a little bit of a relieving feeling when it was happening, because instead of me feeling like it's our fault and my fault that I'm not progressing further, I was able to feel like the world stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Because previous to that, it's not like we were getting like a million tours. It's not like we were getting everything we needed. Like we were fighting with our booking agent and trying to find another agent. Like for us, the music industry has always been a slugging it out thing where, you know, we get a little bit like 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of a thing, where it's like right before the pandemic hit, it wasn't as if we had all these tour offers to go on tour and tour people and everything. So for me, the pandemic was like a positive thing because I had the time to think about what I wanted to write next, what I wanted to do next, whether I want to keep, you know, because for me, it's like I was at a crossroads. Like, do I want to do Brick and Mortar? Do I want to do a solo shit? But at the end of the day, it's like, I do want to do this, even though it's hard. I do want to do it. But it's like, so for me, the pandemic was a little break from feeling like it's all my fault, because that's the way I'm not so, I don't like, when I say all my fault, I mean like collectively the bands, you know what I mean? Like my own and just us as an entity and like that part of it. So I think in certain aspects, like for mental health, the pandemic was kind of good for some bands because they got to stop feeling the FOMO for a minute, you know? Because you're not looking at everybody else crushing it.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, actually. You're not looking at, you're not comparing yourself to everybody else and like, oh, like, why is this band getting on this tour and they're doing this and we're not, right? I could see that happening.
Yeah, the pandemic, that was definitely a year off of dealing with that for sure. You know, for me, the pandemic, it was, you know, it was nice in that like I got to spend a lot of time with my family. You know, I'm a new dad. You know, I have two young children, and
congratulations.
It was awesome being home. Thank you. It's been awesome being home, but at the same time, you know, being a parent, being a dad, and a band is like, you know, as they say in all the fucking movies, it's tough, dude. You know, it's put stress on the band. You know, and we're still trying to deal with it, you know. But it's just one of those age-old fucking stereotypical problematic things that, you know, complicate, you know, bands that are trying to achieve these larger than life things, which we've been trying to do all this time, you know. So it's been difficult, but you know,
for sure. And you put out a couple songs though that are doing really well. I mean, at least I don't know when American Reality came out, but I know Don't Panic and Mystery to Myself have came out this year, right?
Yeah, no, look, we're doing good with what we're doing, and we're like maintaining, our numbers are growing and all of this stuff. But like as far as like other opportunities that, you know, that band, because all right, like if we had just come out, all the stuff we're getting would be nice life-changing things,
right?
You know what I mean? But for us to change our level and like up the plateau to the next thing we need to do, we just need so much more to get there, because we already have some of the things.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's like pieces of the puzzle. It's like, I'm not trying to buy onto a tour like a rich kid and pay somebody 30 grand to go on fucking tour with them. You know what I mean? That to me is like just such a bitch, pathetic move. But at the same time, maybe that's antiquated thinking. Maybe that's like the 90s kid in me thinking like, who would do that? Like, maybe that's everyone's doing that, right? You get what I'm saying? Not that I even have that anyway, but
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And like,
who knows how those opportunities are coming about, right?
Yeah, who knows if they're buying onto the tour, or if two of the dudes fucking snorted coke in the bathroom 4 years ago and they're boys, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
you don't
it's
know.
true. You never know how people, and I've even had booking agents be like, well, you know, if you were friends with people, then you'd get the tours. And I was like, well, if I was friends with people, what the fuck would I have a booking agent, right? Like, because if you're friends with somebody and you could get the tour, then like everybody would just be friends with everybody. They wouldn't,
right. They wouldn't need the middleman. Exactly.
The middleman to do it. But so in a certain aspect, it's like we need to open for bigger bands, right? Or we need to be selling out shows ourselves, which is something that we've never really, I guess, really hit that plateau. We have really great streaming numbers, you know, social media wise, like we don't have even close to what we have on people listening. So for us, the experience has been very odd to be like in a world of music where like our numbers are good and people are listening to us all over the world, all the time, every day, you know, 100,000 plays a day. Like I see it, I follow all of it because we have to pitch with it. Nobody cares because what they want is how many followers do you have? How many this do you have? And that's the weird part we're at now, is that like, how do you make that become more? Like, I know how to make a song. I know how to make a song that means something and put it out, but I don't know how to cross that over to all these other things. Nor do I particularly want to like look at a camera and hold up like a Cool Whip and eat Cool Whip once a day and say a phrase every day, which is essentially like people in social media, they want a consistent thing over and over again.
Yeah, it's a whole job within itself, right?
Yeah, and you have to really want to do that. So the thing is like that, you know, and that's what brought about, I feel like, you know, getting back to what you originally asked with like Mystery to Myself and all of these things, is like this whole record is just really fucking dark because my experience with my life and with this band has been a little bit disenchanting. And that's not because of the fans, because that's the purest thing I've ever seen, is those people loving it. But with Mystery to Myself, you know, right out the bat, you know, I'm coming out saying like, you know, I don't know why I feel dead inside. I try to believe in myself, to love myself. But the truth that I know is I can't love who I don't know. And I'm a mystery to myself. So when you look at all these things that you're doing, you're like, well, am I supposed to be doing this? Is this what's going to make me a better person? You know what I'm saying? Do I even know who I am anymore? Because when you first start doing music, you know what you're going for. But when you're on the hamster wheel, you feel like you're going and going, but never getting further. You kind of don't know. And then you think about all the sacrifices. It's like, well, maybe I'd be a happier person if I didn't put myself through all of it, which I feel like is a feeling that's universal with everyone who does anything.
Sure.
You know, I know it's not specific to me, but, you know, and it's almost like, do I set myself up to be alone because that's what I know? You know?
Right.
But that's kind of that song.
Okay. And do you have like a full piece of work that you're ready to put out, or are you guys just doing singles right now?
We have an EP done at 7 songs, and those 2 songs are on it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
We're just finishing up one more.
Oh, awesome. So the EP is going to come out what, next year, early next year?
Yeah.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And I appreciate your time today. I have one more quick question for you. I want to know if I can get any advice for aspiring artists.
Advice for aspiring artists.
You go first, Brandon.
You could go first. I'll go in second.
Okay. Work hard, be true to yourself, don't lie, and try putting off having a family until you're fucking rich and famous and big.
Words to live by.
Yeah. My advice would be, 1, get yourself a lawyer, because guess who is not going to fuck you? a lawyer because it's in their best interest to make money for you, because then they will make money. That's my pragmatic, real life, non-whimsical advice. Now, on the side of inspiration, when you sing something or you say something or you create something, if you're not at least a little bit embarrassed of what you're saying, you're not being that close to the chest or that honest, because you should be a little bit embarrassed of what you're saying, because that's actually you being vulnerable. So don't be afraid to not immediately love the thing that you're doing that's outside of your comfort zone, because that might be what makes it good, as opposed to always thinking that you're supposed to make the thing that makes you feel just the best, because that might be your ego guiding what you're doing creatively. Other than that, I would say try to stop and be happy about the things you have achieved, even though to make it in this business, it seems like you have to be someone who's not fazed by either achievement or disappointment. Try to take the time to take care of yourself, because if you fall apart halfway through, you're not going to make anything else.